With me now is Andrew Teacher, Managing Director of Blackstock Consulting and your independent property consultant. Welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. What was your first reaction when you realised the extent of what had happened here at Grenfell Tower?
I think the first thing that I thought about is that we need to really focus on the welfare of all the residents and the victims of this terrible, tragic incident. And that there's a lot of speculation going around that's unhelpful. It's not going to achieve anything. And at this point in time, our sole focus should be on caring for the residents, on making sure that people have got everything they need, they're being rehoused quickly, and that the trauma that's going to be created by this is being appropriately dealt with.
And we know that people are obviously inevitably will be rehoused. Kensington and Chelsea are saying it won't necessarily be in the borough. That would be their first priority, but they might have to move people out of the borough. So after experiencing a trauma like this, having to move home, children potentially move schools, it's a lot for people to deal with.
It is, and I think the response that we've seen has been pretty slow. There hasn't been much. There hasn't been much sight of the TMO, the Tenants Management Organisation that was responsible for managing the building. The response, I think, from all political parties so far has been to try and turn this into a bit of a political football match. And I think the singular lesson that we need to draw from this is that we need to take politics, we need to take housing out of being a political game. It shouldn't simply be about point scoring. It shouldn't be about trying to create a class war. It shouldn't be about trying to joust for positioning within the Conservative Party. What we should be looking at now, after this terrible incident, is getting a proper answer, a proper public inquiry where the media, where Sky News, where everybody else can properly scrutinise everything that's gone wrong here and all the evidence around it, and that going forward we have a cabinet minister for housing, not just a junior minister. We have a cabinet member for housing and a cabinet minister for housing. We also think about healthcare, crime, education, and all of the other things that housing interlinks with. And going forward as a country, we invest properly in housing and we really evaluate the role that proper social housing, proper housing for all tenures can play in supporting all areas of society.
There will be those following on from this tragedy who might say that we shouldn't be housing people in these types of tower blocks, that this has told us it simply doesn't work and it's a disaster waiting to happen. Would you agree with that this should be the last of these types of blocks that we see?
I think everybody would agree that this should never ever be seen again anywhere on the planet. I think we need to avoid any knee-jerk reactions, we need to avoid any scaremongering, and we need to avoid jumping to conclusions before we have the facts. Clearly there are probably about 3,000 or 4,000 towers of an olden variety in this country, of this vintage. But ultimately, with any building, any structure, and I don't claim to be an engineering expert, but I've worked enough around property, and whatever the structure you have, however well built it is, however new it is, if it's badly managed, it's going to be dangerous. And I think out of this, what we need to look at in regard of policy and regulation is not just design standards, not just architectural standards and structural standards and quality of cladding and everything else, but also the management of these buildings, how they're run, how they are overseen, what alarms, what mist systems, what sprinkler systems, all of that stuff is useless unless you have proper management that can be scrutinised. And I think what we need to see now is proper responsibility. We need to see politics taken out of it. And what I would call on from all main political parties is to join together to take political jousting out of this and to find a way forward where we can think about how we have a fully funded housing system in this country that builds homes, that manages homes, and that can look to invest and ensure that all areas of society are properly catered for, so that this never ever happens again.
Okay, Andrew Teacher, thank you very much for speaking to us, an expert in housing there. Well, you're watching Sky News with continued coverage on the fire here at Grenfell Tower. As we know,